When you have an ex-husband, an ex-partner, whatever that ex looks like, they're probably an ex for a reason. So the question is, when you have an ex, anything, how do you communicate in a healthy, effective way with that person? Stick around. We are going to talk to Jenni Rock about this, and she's written a book. So we're going to talk about the book. We're going to get her tips on communicating. And I am so excited. This is actually Jenni's second visit on the Communicate Great podcast. And I am your host, Traci Poe, the founder of Communicate Great and of the Communicate Great podcast. So let's get into it. Jenni, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me back.
I was excited to learn that you'd written another book because I knew that that would be a good excuse to have you back because our first conversation was such a good one. And for those who do or don't know, I have an ex, and yeah, we handle our communication probably in a different way. But our kids are adults now, so it's not that big of a deal as when they were in the home. So, why don't you share with our audience who you are, what you do, and how you serve the people that you help?
Okay, so I'm Jenni Rock. I'm in the UK and I am a toxic co-parenting relationship breakdown expert, which basically means that when everything falls apart and you're arguing over a paperclip, it just gets to the extremes. That's when one of the people kind of says, I've had enough. I can't live like this anymore. I can't cope with this. And that's when I step in and help them to change it. Because it doesn't take change on both sides to actually start the process changing. Just one person can make a massive difference. And in 90% of cases, you will find that when you up your game in terms of communicating, the other person will then raise their game to match it. So it does work quite well.
Okay, I love that because if you're doing the same thing, what is that saying? Something about if you do the same thing over and over again and you expect something to change, that's the
Yeah.
definition of insanity. I think that's how the saying goes.
Yeah, it's Einstein's quote, doing the same thing over and over and again, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity, definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what happens because we get trapped in like this hamster wheel, because we're so caught up in the moment that we don't understand what we're doing, and we're not taught how to manage conflict. We're not taught how to communicate well, especially when there is conflict involved, or when it is a very contentious, or sort of emotionally driven situation. Because
Mhm.
when we get divorced, we kind of go into to getting that divorce thinking everything's going to be so much better once we're divorced.
Right.
No, it's not.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yes.
It's kind of like divorce means that the gloves are then off, and everything then gets really nasty,
Yeah.
or can not. I say does. I mean can get really nasty because not every situation gets nasty, and there are some parents that are able to co-parent really effectively, and that's
Right.
fantastic.
But
So I'm for it.
I would say that that number of people who can co-parent and communicate in a healthy way, in an effective way, my guess, and I don't know percentages, and maybe you have a percentage, I don't know, but
No, I
my
think
guess is
it's
that
small.
it's a very low number of exes that
Yeah.
can really function well together. I mean, often you're an ex for a reason. And you
Mm.
are right. So many times people think, oh, if I just split, get a divorce, move out, whatever, oh, everything is going to be so much better. And you know what? If you don't have kids, maybe that is the case.
Mm.
But when you do have kids, and especially minor kids, those who are living in your home still,
Yeah.
that's a different story. You are still very involved in communicating with them. And so yeah, the trick is how do you learn to communicate in a way A, that doesn't drive you bonkers, and B, doesn't impact the kids. And the last time you were here, we talked about how it impacted the kids to be kind of caught in the middle of this
Totally.
nastiness. So, okay, so who do you serve? If somebody is like, oh man, I really could talk to her, I'm not communicating well with my ex, just talk to me. Is there, is it only men? Is it only women? Is it doesn't matter? Talk about that.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter whether it's a man or a woman or anything in between. Gender is not an issue. The person I deal with needs to be the person that wants things to change,
Right.
and that's the crucial part. Is that they have to want it to be different, and they have to be willing to do what it takes to make a change, because it involves a lot of practice. It doesn't just, if I could just give everybody a magic button and say, press that and it will all be great, then I
Right.
would in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, that doesn't exist. So being able to communicate in a better way is a skill and not a personality trait. Therefore, it can be learned.
Yes.
So anybody can learn it, but they have to be willing to do the work.
Right.
And they have to be willing to take the ownership of that
Right.
situation, because, you know, we control everything within our little bubble. Um, and that includes how we receive things. So, and that's part of the work that we do is looking at, right, okay, so what happens when I look up, the classic, I get a text message, oh my God, it's the ex. And you don't want to open your phone because you know that they're just going to be going on about something that you've supposedly done wrong again.
Right.
And it's so frustrating, or they're going to be demanding something that you don't want to discuss because as far as you're concerned it's not up for negotiation, or the phone rings and you're thinking, I just can't take another screaming match. um, Normally the people that I work with are pretty much at the end of their tether.
Mm.
They really are, they've gone through such a rough time that they really don't know where else to turn. And I always joke that I play in the deep, dark, murky, dirty end of the pool, where it's the worst of the worst.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be the worst of the worst, because anybody, if they're willing to make that change, I am more than happy to work with them. But they just have to be willing to do the work. That's it. That's my only caveat.
Right. Right. So again, I imagine that when you say they're kind of at the end of their tether, or we would say at the end of their rope, I
Mm,
get that because, and I would think it comes real fast sometimes, right?
yeah.
Because when you get to that point where you don't want to answer the phone, you don't want to return the text, you don't want to have to face them in public at the kids' school play or
Mm.
whatever, just knowing that you can get to a better place, that there is hope, that's huge.
It is huge, because quite often these people are very isolated, because they'll look around them and they'll think, why is nobody else's divorce gone so badly? Why is everybody else okay talking to their ex? Why does nobody in my family have this problem? Why am I the only one? Is it me? What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Um, and it's not that they are actually doing anything wrong. It's not that there is, a problem per se with them. The problem is that they don't have the skills because they've never been taught them.
Right, right,
And it is as simple as that. But in
right,
the meantime, what's happening is that all of this trauma, all of this conflict, all of this aggression, all of this aggravation, it's all stacking up inside of them.
right,
So quite often what's happening is that their mental health is taking a massive hit. Physically, their health is taking a hit because all of the stress hormones are running around their body because it's constantly on fight or flight.
right,
And they'll be getting sick more often. They'll be feeling really run down. They'll be struggling with anxiety or depression. The list goes on. There are so many bad outcomes when
Yes.
they just leave these things to fester in the
Right.
hope that they'll just get reasonable one day. Well,
Right.
that just doesn't happen,
Mm-mm.
because why would they change the way that they communicate with you when what they're doing is working?
Exactly. And often it's to get under your skin and to try
Yeah,
to manipulate and control you.
absolutely.
So,
It's bullying.
yeah, if
It's,
it
you know,
yeah, if it's
it,
working, why are they going to stop? Right?
exactly. Why would
So,
they stop if it's working? Yeah.
exactly. Now, here's another thing though I was thinking when you said, they're out and they say, "Well, why is nobody else in my family having these issues with?" But here's the thing, maybe they were at one point and maybe
Mm,
they've gotten the skills to adapt and to grow and to be that one part of the cog that is changing, and then that changes the entire trajectory of those communication moments.
yeah.
So I would just say, if you're watching or listening and you think, "What's wrong with me? Nobody else is like this." But do you really know? Maybe at one point they were like that. And maybe
Mm,
they got the skills to change. So I just think, Jenny, what you do, and I said this before, what you do is huge, because the number of people that break up, again, whether it's an actual divorce or whether they are just splitting with a partner that they were never married to, what, it doesn't matter. A split is a split.
yes.
And the number of people that split up and have children, again, I don't know a statistic, but I know the number is high. It is so high. And let me say this, I've seen this before. When you have a group of people getting together and their commonality is that they have an ex, sometimes those people will kind of spur on the bad behavior toward the ex
Yeah,
because they maybe have bad behavior with their ex.
absolutely. I've seen
I've
that
seen
time
that
and time
before.
again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so talk to us about your book. And because we're the Communicate Great podcast, we share with our audience tips on communicating. And you were here before, you know that. So talk about your new book and talk through some tips that you have for helping our audience communicate at a more effective level.
Absolutely. So the book is called Healing Through Words, and it's basically a guide to talking to your ex without hurting the kids. So I wrote it as a kind of if they say this, you can do that. And I wrote it with the intention of helping to explain a little bit better what is going on in your head when these things happen, and how you can actually get a better way of responding. So I have in here, oh my goodness, so many different things that I cover, but talking through, to start with the science of conflict and connection and what happens in your brain, because understanding is half the battle. If you understand what's happening when they say this, your brain automatically goes into this mode.
Yes.
Once you can see it, once you can understand that that's what's happening, you can start to notice and change it. And I am very much a big believer in educating people in just the basics.
Yes.
Goes a long, long way to reducing conflict, to reducing the reactivity that people have. Um, and to help them just communicate in a better, more healthy way. But I'm talking about red flags, the common pitfalls, the reaction versus the talking, the neutral zone. How to kind of neutralize conversations when it's not maybe quite going the way that you expect it to. But also the impact on the kids, because you might think that they're not hearing or seeing this, but you're wrong. They are
Yes.
seeing and they are hearing everything. And they are looking at it as a guide to when they grow up, how should they deal with their ex-partners? And do we really want to continue promoting that kind of behavior with the next generation?
Right.
Because, I knew that was certainly not something that I wanted to pass on to my child, so that he thought that that was the best way to behave when a relationship broke up. I wanted it to be different for him, because it's a generational issue. And quite often we replicate the way that we behave based on what we saw from our parents.
Right.
So if we had parents that went through a really bad breakup, we kind of, you know, echo what they did. And I come from a family where we're very passive aggressive. We don't deal with conflict very well at all. We just tend to ignore it, in the hope that it'll go away, because obviously everything just vanishes if you don't accept
Right.
it.
Let's bury our head in the sand and pretend like it's not going to impact
Mm,
us or anybody around us.
absolutely.
No, I want to say something real quick. I want to interject in. And you
Mm,
talked about we don't want to train our children on how to behave, how to communicate when they break up with somebody. But honestly, Jenny, I think it goes even deeper than that. I think that if that's how you're behaving, you're also training them just to talk to people in that way, sometimes in general. Like,
yeah,
oh, this is an acceptable way to talk to somebody,
yeah.
right? And so I think, again, I think what you do is huge. Okay, all right, interrupted. Okay,
But yeah, I mean, it covers things like, you know, sort of how to text back when they're sending you a bit of an inflammatory text. And I've got sort of real examples within the book of well, okay, well, when they say this, try this, you know, because
right.
it's about removing the emotion from the communication. And
Yes,
that is the biggest challenge, but also it is the biggest win.
yes,
So, so once people can build that skill of not just reacting to whatever message they've been sent or they're getting, but to actually stop and breathe and think about the way that they're replying before they actually push that button or open their mouth or write that email.
right.
That is probably the best thing that they can do, is to take that pause and think about it. Because one of the tips I give people is, whenever you're responding to your ex, I want you to think about, in 5, 10, 15 years' time, your child is going to look at these messages. And what do you think they're going to think about when they read those messages? What do you think they're going to say?
Right,
Because, you know, there is no excuse. Even if somebody is behaving badly, there is no excuse for us to behave badly back.
right, right,
So we get to stop this in its tracks rather than continue the bad
right,
behavior. And just like we would um, have expectations for our children in terms of the way that they behave with grown-ups and the way that they behave, well, who's monitoring our behavior? So, you know, we don't, just because we're grown-ups doesn't give us a free pass to basically be mean to other people and
exactly.
expect for it to be okay.
Right,
Because it's all you're doing is you're throwing your words at the trampoline and they're coming straight back at you, probably tenfold.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, and it's about things like boundaries. We always talk about boundaries, and it's kind of like, you know, they're used to punish people, but they're not. Boundaries are there as an expression of self-love. What you will and will not tolerate, what you do and do
mm,
not expect to happen within your communications, and you get what you accept. So if you continue to accept the abuse, you'll continue getting the abuse. If you continue to accept those, you know, sort of bullying emails, then you'll continue to get those bullying emails. As we said earlier, why would they change? If they're getting what they want, why change?
right,
so,
right,
so you have to build that self-esteem that says, actually, I am worthy of more than this. And we're not going to go on the offense. We're not going to go on the attack. We're just going to very calmly stand our ground and say,
right,
this is my boundary, this is what I will tolerate, and anything over and above that, I'm sorry, but I will not respond to. And it doesn't have to be mean, it doesn't have to be shouty, and it doesn't have to be loud and obnoxious and horrible. It can just be very calmly, I don't accept that form of communication.
right. You know, I like that you said, and I hadn't thought about boundaries. I talk to people about boundaries, but I hadn't thought about it as an expression of self love. And I really like that idea that setting a boundary is showing self love. And that is so necessary. And it's not anything that you even have to say to your ex, oh, I'm setting a boundary so I can love myself, so I can express self love,
No,
right? That has nothing to do with it. But you just know, you know what, I am valuable. I don't know if in the last time that you were here that we talked about self-esteem. I can't remember if we did, but so
mm,
many times when you're in the middle of being beaten down by somebody who's being verbally and emotionally abusive, which is often the case in these really nasty
yeah,
conversations, man, it's easy to allow your self-esteem, the way that you value yourself, plummet.
it goes
And
out the
so to
window
say,
completely.
yeah. And so to say, I am worth loving. I am
Mm,
worth loving myself. So I'm going to set this boundary. That's huge. I really like that.
yeah, and it's it is purely and simply, we tolerate so much because it's almost like we're told we have to. And I'll give you an example. My other half was sick recently, and um, in the run up to him going into hospital, he was whining about not feeling very well. He was complaining that he was coughing and he didn't feel very well, but he wouldn't take the tablets and he wouldn't go see the doctor. Or I finally managed to drag him to the doctor, but then I would say, "Well, you need to take your medicine," and he wouldn't take the medicine. And I'm all for helping somebody that helps themselves, but when somebody doesn't do what they need to do to help themselves, I'm kind of like, "Oh, get on with it then." So I had this very, very kind of blasé attitude of, well, if you're going to not do what you need to do, it's on you.
Right.
It's not my job to run around after you. You're grown up. I'm not your mother.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Right. Right.
and then after he ended up in hospital with pneumonia. And afterwards, I had my mother and my older sister. Both of them said to me, "Do you feel guilty now?" No. Well, you should feel guilty now because he was really sick. I'm like, that doesn't excuse him being silly and um, basically not being very nice to be around. It does not excuse that.
Right.
I don't expect him to be entertaining me or to be throwing a party. Just basic manners, basic politeness is my expectation, and I don't feel guilty at all. And in the end, I had to say to my mum, I said, it's okay for us to have a different perspective on this. I still love
Right.
you, Mum. I still love you, but it's okay for us not to agree. We're going to have to agree to disagree here.
Right.
And afterwards, I was thinking about it, thinking she's accepted basically her husband taking out on her when he doesn't feel well because she's been told for her entire life that that's what's expected of you as a woman. Because you take it out on those that are closest to you. Ever had that?
Mm-hmm.
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 Why? Why is that okay?
Right. 100%. You are 100%. Yeah, that's not an excuse.
No,
Right.
it's not. It's not an excuse at all. And 5 years ago, I wouldn't have had that response. I would have been, oh yeah, what, whatever you need me to do, I'll do, blah blah blah, be the good little woman. But I'm kind of like, no, I deserve better.
Right. Right.
And that was a big statement for me to
Yeah.
to actually say, no, I don't agree that I should feel guilty. Um, and I think for them it was quite eye opening that they were thinking, well, why doesn't she feel guilty? I'm like, I don't. I see no need to.
And maybe you opened a whole world view for them, like, oh, I don't have to feel guilty either.
Yeah, very
Like,
possibly.
wow.
Yeah, very possibly. But it's things like that come from generations of conditioning of what you're expected to do, especially as women and
I agree.
especially as men. Men are supposed to be strong. They're meant to be the breadwinner. They're meant to be sort of tough and not cry, and they're meant to be X, Y, Z. And then women are supposed to be soft and fluffy and caring and nurturing. But but we're all different. So why do we have to stick with those stereotypes? Because
Right.
surely the world has moved on from that now.
Yeah.
Surely society as a whole is moving in the right direction in terms of equality and, sort of allowing people to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, then I think it's also okay for us to value ourselves
Right.
and to say that, do you know what, I'm worth more than that.
I would say it's more than you said. It's okay. I would say it's essential.
Mm.
I would say it's truly essential for our mental health, for our physical health, for our spiritual health, for us to say more than it's okay. You know, it needs to be the rule rather than the exception.
Yes,
That when people communicate with us, it's in a respectful and healthy way.
absolutely,
Mm, right.
absolutely. And as individuals, if somebody is talking to us in a way that is not respectful and is not communicating in a healthy way, then we have that right to be able to end that communication and remove ourselves from that situation.
Right. Yeah.
Whether it be putting the phone down, you know,
Right. Right.
whether it be walking away from
Mhm.
a text message or an email or not responding, because another thing that we tend to do is we react. We don't think, we react.
Yes.
And it is so easy for emotion at that point when you're feeling under attack. Your reptilian brain is going flight or flight, fight or flight, fight or flight,
Right.
and and people at that point will just react with a response instead of taking a step back and allowing that logical part of the brain to kick in and say, actually, no, it's not okay for them to have little Johnny that day because we've already got plans that they were fully aware of, and to be able to stand their ground in a calm and confident and respectful way, because that is what you want your child to mirror as they grow up, to be able to have disagreements with people
Right.
and to be able to still respect the other person and still communicate in a respectful way to the other person, regardless of how the other person is behaving.
Right. Right.
And that's kind of the crux of it, is that they will do what they see.
Right. Okay, so here's a question. This is the way I've handled something in the past, and I'm just curious to hear your take on it. So there have been times when somebody has been full on yelling at me, just berating me, yelling at me, and I've just taken the phone and hung up. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think that's okay, or do you think it's okay, or should you preface it with, I'm not going to let you talk to me that way, and then hang up? I've done both, actually.
I don't think there's a right or wrong in what
Okay.
you do. I think that in many situations there's no right or wrong. It's just what works for you and what doesn't. For some
Right.
people, they would have the confidence to say, I'm sorry, but I don't accept communication in this manner, and then hang up in a very
Mm-hmm.
calm way. For other people, they don't have that confidence or they don't have that strength in that moment to be able to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And if it's the safest thing for them to do is they can just hang up, or they can just put the phone on the side and walk away.
Like it. I like it. Just put the phone down, walk off.
Yeah,
Actually,
because
I've done that before too. Like just say, and you can hear that they're still going.
mm,
And I would just kind of mess around the house, just hearing that they were still going. When they calmed down, I would go pick it up
mm,
again. Yeah, I've done that before. Yeah,
yeah,
that's fun. Yeah.
yeah. But it's every individual is very different in the way that they cope with these kind of situations, and it would be wrong for me to say this is the only way for you to do it.
Okay.
So it's whatever you feel strong enough to do in that
Mm,
moment, whether that be just putting the phone down and walking away, whether that be pressing the end call button, whether that be saying, I don't expect, I don't accept communication in this way, and then hang up.
right.
Because it's different people have different strengths and different people will be coping with different things at different times. So
Then
there
that
is no one fits all
right.
answer.
Okay.
but it's whatever people have the strength to do at that time.
Right.
And any of those options are preferable to you still listening to the ranting and raving and taking it all in and being abused.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, anything other than that is better than actually just taking a barrel load of abuse.
Mm. Okay. All right. That is a great answer. Any of the above.
Yeah,
Any of
any
the
of the
above.
above.
Just don't stay and take it. That's the thing, is
Hmm.
just don't stay and take it. That's
Yeah,
that's the big. Okay. All right. So are there things that you can share with us from your book? Maybe two, three things from the book that are really great tips for helping our audience communicate with somebody who is an ex, or honestly, even just somebody who's difficult to communicate with. Because that
yeah,
happens
sure,
at work and at home, right?
totally, totally. And one of the things I would encourage people to do is to have a recovery plan. So recovery plan is for basically when you fall back into that mode of, oh my God, I can't take, and you just kind of take the abuse and you just kind of shut down and you just can't cope with it all. A recovery plan is there to help you to get back to a healthy state of communication.
Mm,
So um, the components of an effective recovery plan, the first thing is to pause the escalation. So take a break, you know, let's revisit this when we've had time to cool off a little bit. Um, and silence is sometimes a fantastic tool to use. I've used it quite often. And just silence, just still look at them and just stay silent. It's great. Really unnerves them. But
I can see that.
it,
Right.
it does. But it just gives the conversation time to just let those words just fall to the ground. You don't have to pick them up. You can just let them fall to the ground.
Yeah.
Um, and, using a grounding tool, whether that be some deep breathing, sort of box breathing, 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4, and just rinse and repeat for as long as you need to just bring your heart rate back down.
Mm,
Um, because it's just really important that you reconnect with your values before you respond. Um, and ask yourself, what does my calm state want me to do? Or, if you've got a family member that's really good at giving advice, you could go, well, what would they tell me to do in this moment?
mm,
Because it probably wouldn't be to yell back at the person. It would probably
right.
be to do something different.
Right.
But reflect. You can reflect and not ruminate. So you don't have to haul yourself over the coals a million times over. You can just sit down and say, okay, this happened. I can't change that. That happened. So if that happens again, how can I manage that differently? And just by having these thoughts, or just even written down and stick them on the fridge, it's a great way to just say, oh my God, it all fell apart again. Right, back to the fridge, grab the list. Right, what do I need to do? Just having this recovery plan is really handy to just bring you back from the cliff edge where you're currently sort of teetering. Um, and the next one would be repairing the connection with the child. And that could be something like, you know what, I'm really sorry that you had to hear that.
Mm,
I didn't behave in the way that I wanted to
mm,
in that moment. And I'm really sorry that you had to see and hear that. I'm really going to do better next time.
right.
Because you're teaching them how to actually own up to their mistakes
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
how to take ownership of the situation and to say, do you know
Right.
what, I could have done better,
Right.
you know?
Right. I just want to pause here for a second, because I think this is huge. And this is advice that I would give people. And it is something that, maybe not every time, maybe I wasn't 100%, but generally I understood that I needed to let my kids know that I recognized that I kind of blew it. Right.
Mm,
And I'm not even talking, let's just be general. I'm not even talking necessarily about communicating with their dad as much as just, I blew it. And I think it's huge to model that awareness of
mm-hmm,
when you make a mistake, and to let them know that you know that it impacted them and you are sorry for that and you'll
Yeah.
work on that. Because so many times people think they have this mentality, I don't owe my child an apology for anything. They're my child. And
Mm,
I think that that's short sighted. I feel like you have an opportunity to teach them, to mentor them in how to handle admitting that you're wrong, taking responsibility for it, and apologizing, trying to fix it.
yeah.
So, yeah, I like that you've included that.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and like you say, it's not just about the divorce. It could be that you lost your temper while you were driving, and they witnessed a little moment of road rage, or you used curse words, and you can
Right.
say, "I'm so sorry that you had to witness that. I have no excuses. I behaved in a way that I really shouldn't have, and I will do better."
Right.
And and teaching the children that it's okay to make mistakes is huge for their self-esteem.
It is huge. It is huge. And I want to add something to that because when I work with people on interpersonal communication skills, one of the areas is conflict and conflict management, conflict resolution. And I want to say here that when you say the words, I will do better or I will work on it, then take action. Don't
Mm,
just say the hollow words, I'll
no,
work on it, I'll try harder, I'll do better. No, actually take some steps to do better, right? So
absolutely.
don't just say the empty words. You have to follow through because, again, the kids are watching
Yes.
and you owe it to yourself also, right? Not just your
Mm,
kids, but also to yourself to follow through on what you've said you're going to do.
totally. And I'm a firm believer that if you promise something, if you say you're going to do something, just do it. And I am very clear that I don't make promises that I can't keep. So if I can't guarantee I'm going to keep it, then I will not make a promise.
Right,
I might say, do you know what? I'm going to do my best to achieve that, but I'm not necessarily in control of all of the parts of that,
right.
sort of
That's
whatever it
a
is that needs to be done. Yeah. So I don't have the ultimate control there. So I'm going to do my best, but I can't make a promise. And
right.
I taught my son that in that it's okay to make mistakes. That's part of learning. It's part of growing. We learn how to walk, how to talk, how to write, how to read. All of those things are learned by making mistakes, by messing it up, and by keep trying and trying and trying again. So this is no different. Communication is no different. It's just another skill that we have to master. So we
Mhm.
will make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, but we have to learn from them. It's not okay to just keep making mistakes and then just keep making excuses and then never changing. That's
Right.
not okay, you know?
Mhm.
And to be honest, if that's the role model behavior that you're showing to your children, then don't be surprised when you're in the nursing home and they say they're going to come and visit and then they never turn
And
up.
they don't.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
if you're teaching them to not back up their words with
Right.
action,
Right.
then you're the one that's going to actually get the fallout from that as well.
Right. Right. I'll clean my room, Mom.
Mm,
I'll take out the trash, Mom.
mm-hmm,
Not if you're modeling, not following through. Mm,
mm-hmm.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
learning that. Okay.
yeah,
All right. All right.
totally.
Okay. So thank you for allowing me to interject that in.
That's absolutely fine. Reframing is a big one. How are you receiving that message? Is there any other way that that could be perceived? Blue sky it. Is there any other way that that could be perceived? And even if you need to sort of bounce it off with somebody else to just get a different perspective, because there's always a choice as to how we choose to interpret information. And there's normally not just one answer of how you could receive it. There's millions of answers of how you could choose to receive it. But
Right.
ultimately, we have the choice.
Right. I like that you said bounce it off somebody else because actually that is something I will do. I will, I'll leave a situation. Let's say I'm in a situation, my daughter's around, my husband's around, my son, somebody's around, and I will something will happen, and then later, after the fact, I will say, did you hear that comment? Like, how did you take that? Like, I won't tell them how I took it first, because
Mm,
I don't want to skew what they might say. I will just say, what did you take? What did your gut tell you? What were your thoughts on that? And sometimes it's, oh, I didn't even notice it. And then I think, okay, well, maybe I don't need to build something out of that. And then sometimes they will say, oh, I did catch that, and this is what my thought was.
mm.
And often it does match what I'm thinking, and I'll just say, okay, just wanted to make sure, right? But sometimes it's something different, and I'll say, oh, okay, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Because if we start off with the fact of something has happened, like I don't know, that the car has been, uh, somebody has cut you off on the freeway,
right,
and then you interpret that as, how dare they, you know, how could they do that to me just because they drive a big fancy car, thinks they're in the road, blah 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 blah, and you go off on a rant. But the reality is, could there be a different explanation? Could they be rushing to see a sick relative? Could they be, um, you know, could there be something urgent that they need to get to that has caused them
exactly.
to do it? Maybe they didn't even see you. So they didn't deliberately do it. Maybe they just didn't see you. Maybe they made a
Right,
mistake.
right.
Maybe they feel really bad because they've just realized they've just cut you up and now they feel really bad. So, there could be many different interpretations to that one fact, and that interpretation will generate an emotional response. And that emotion will drive the action that you then choose to take.
Right.
So by changing that interpretation, it can change everything that follows.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's big. Reframing is a wonderful tool, and it's a tool that you just have to practice until it becomes second nature.
Yes, yes. I really, that is something else that I work with
Yeah,
people on when we're talking about interpersonal comm skills. So love it. Love it.
yeah.
All right.
So last bit of the recovery plan is reset your approach. So check your boundaries. Is there one that you let slide? Have you been maybe just kind of giving somebody a bit of a pass, and now all of a sudden they've done something, and you're suddenly like, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, and you've gone tipped over the edge again, and now you're on nuclear. So it's because a lot of it is, it's like ping pong. You get back what you give out, you know. So if you are giving out negativity, if you are giving out anger, frustration, um, if you're giving out just this, I really hate you and I do not want to have to speak to you, um, if you're giving out that vibe, it's going to come back.
Right.
You can't expect it not to. Of course, it's
Right.
going to come back.
Right.
But that again bleeds into all areas of life. If you treat the server badly, then good luck with your food.
Exactly. We'll be out to eat, and I'll tell somebody will say something. I'll be like, no, don't. I don't want to my food. So,
Yeah. So it's everything has a consequence. But if you have basically a little recovery plan on the fridge that will remind you to check all of those things, then it kind of brings that level down again. So
that's
instead of being
brilliant.
nuclear, then it brings you back down to calm and
Yeah.
able to cope with it, because you can then see it for what it is.
Right, right. I just think that's brilliant, and I want to use your last one when you say, what you're giving out, you're going to get back. But to go to one of your original points, that it only takes one person to change the dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are giving out that negativity, that nastiness, and they respond in a different way, in a positive way, think about what that's going to do for you, how that's
Yeah.
going to help bring that down. And so your whole idea of it doesn't take two people to make a change. It only takes one person to make a change, and
Yeah.
let that person be you, so that you don't have all that stress. That is huge. So that would be a good way to think about it. What if they were the one who changed? How would that feel? How would that change me? and then know that there's a high probability that if it's inverse, they're giving you the negative, the nastiness, and you respond differently than has been, that would change the again the trajectory of that nasty, negative, unhealthy
Totally,
conversation.
totally. And it's, you get to be the person that you want your child to model. So this is your opportunity to become that calm, confident voice of reason that is able to deal with any conflict. Because once you've got these conflict tools down pat, you can deal with any conflict. It doesn't matter what the conflict is, because you've got the skills
Right.
and you've
Right.
practiced them lots. And you've
Yes.
made mistakes and you've figured out how to come back from it. And you know,
Exactly.
it makes life
Exactly.
so much better.
Yes. And grace and mercy, baby steps. People will say, well, how long? Well, how long have you had this habit? Right?
Mm,
You're not going to flip that habit overnight perfectly,
no.
right? You can start making steps to flip that habit, but sometimes we do have those setbacks. And when you do,
Yeah,
you get back up on the horse and you try again, right? And you
totally.
say, I'm sorry, I did not handle that in the way I should have, or in the way
Mm,
that was best, or, whatever you're
yeah,
going to say. But you admit it, you take responsibility, and then you get back up on that horse and you try again. So,
absolutely.
yeah. Okay. All right. So before we close out, Jenni, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
Okay, um, I think the most important thing to remember is that when you are going through this, you're not alone.
Mm,
Help is available, and most people will feel ashamed. They will feel very reluctant to share the problems that they're having with other people. They'll be very reluctant to admit that there's a problem. Um, and it's kind of like being an alcoholic. You have to first acknowledge that there is a problem, and then you have to take
right.
responsibility to want to deal with it. It's the same kind of thing. You have to acknowledge that there is a problem, that this communication is really not working well, and
Mm,
then you have to be willing to take the steps to change it. So people will fall into either camp. There will be some people that acknowledge the problem, but they're not willing to do whatever it takes to change it. You will
mm,
have people that can't see the problem, therefore don't see any need to take the steps to change it. You will have people that can see the problem but don't know how to take the steps to change it, and then you'll have the people that see the problem and are willing to make the changes required.
right.
And it's a little bit like investing in yourself. If you are wanting life to change, if you want to get out of this quagmire that life has thrown you into, it doesn't have to be with me. There's lots of other people out there that help with communicating with your ex after divorce. I tend to take the most toxic cases. That's fine. I'm happy to do so. In a way, I wish that there was never a need for me.
Right.
I became the person that I needed when I was going through this, because I didn't have a
Mm,
clue.
right.
So I had to do the work, and I had to find out how to do it right and how to make the changes and what needs to change. And I screwed up and I messed it up and I got it wrong sometimes, and that's fine because that's how we learn.
Mm,
Um, but the first thing was I spent so many years just not acknowledging that there was a problem. It's kind of
mm,
like burying it, hiding it, just pretending that everything was fine. No, it's all fine, everything's fine, I'm dealing with it, and just trying to cope with the situation. I think the
right.
important thing for anybody that is stuck in this kind of situation is to recognize there is hope, there is help. You just have to be willing to just kind of put your hand up and say, hey, can I talk to somebody? Um, and that's the first and most important step. Just as you would if you were a gambler or an alcoholic. I'm not saying that all these people are gamblers and alcoholics. I'm just saying that the logic is the
Right.
same. You have to see the
Mhm.
problem and be willing to do something about it.
Right.
And there is plenty of help out there. I'm not the only person on the planet whilst I would love to help everybody, obviously I can't help everybody, but you know, just even first off, acknowledging the problem is a good place to start.
Mm.
And then
Yes.
you can start looking at what options there are.
Right.
So
Right.
it's about being honest with ourselves. And it took an intervention from my big sister before I actually did anything about my situation, for which I will be eternally grateful.
Good.
Because she kind of had a bit of an intervention and sent me off for therapy, because I was just burying the problem and
Mm.
just completely doing my ostrich impression, and that changed everything.
Yeah. Well, good.
So
Good for your sister. I'm glad.
yes,
And I'm glad.
she's bossy.
Well, okay, so I will put your information and how people can contact you in the show
Mm.
description and also the link to your book, Healing Through Words. That's huge. And so I would also say to the audience, even if this is not you, even if you are not dealing with a toxic ex, you know somebody who is. And maybe just share this episode with them and hopefully they will gain some things. And if they want to work with Jenni, they can get in touch with her. And that's the beautiful thing about the internet these days. You don't have to be
It's
in
amazing.
England to work with her. She can work with anyone through the internet. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, Jenni. Again, time number 2 on the Communicate Great podcast. And what you bring is so huge, again, because there are so many people who are split up or are in the process of splitting
Mm.
up from someone. And again, especially when there are kids, it's huge to get that support, and Jenni can offer the support. So, Jenni, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Tracy. I think I'll have to write a fourth book now so that I can come back a third time.
There you go. Exactly. Do it. I would love to have you back on again. So, all right, everybody, we will see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.
Let me stop it.